Herzlich willkommen, liebe Kollegen. Oh, sorry, yeah, we need to switch to English. I totally forgot. So sorry, Matthias. So welcome everyone. I don't think we need to do another introduction. You had already your presentation. So let's directly jump into the topic. I think we have heard a lot today about like the payments industry and the banking industry in general, about digitization of the industry and how the industry is changing. I was presenting now about like innovations in the payment space. And we have seen many innovations, in particular on the consumer interface, on the client interface. And many of those, being it like buy now, pay later with Klarna, or also mobile payments with Swish, were initiated also in the Nordics in particular. So therefore, towards our colleague from the Nordics directly the question, which one had the most significant impact in your opinion on the consumers, and why?
I would say absolutely Swish. Instant person-to-person, cost-free instant transactions is the most profound change. I would say buy now, pay later has been around since the 50s, so in different versions. The sound is I don't no clue. Okay.
Technology.
Maybe switch off. So this is just to prove that we are really live on stage here in Frankfurt. Yeah, it was already clear.
Now I'm not muted anymore.
No, much better.
Okay, okay. Swish. I repeat myself once again. The most profound change is the instant transfer of money, costless. And that's a joint effort between the banks. I think that really brought value. However, no one makes money out of it. So, but it definitely changed consumer behavior.
Mm. Did it help to reduce the cash circulation in the country? And do you believe there will be no cash in the future anymore?
Nordics is very close to have no cash. It's almost only criminals using cash these days. So
Exactly.
I haven't carried any Swedish currency for a long time. The only currency I carry in my wallet is US dollars and euros. I have no Swedish currency.
Okay, perfect. If we look at the European market, we see that actually in a lot of banks tell us this, that they actually lost already the battle in the B2C segment for payments. Yeah? They lost it to fintechs, big techs, digital platforms, etc. Yeah? Maybe to you, Roland, how do you see those different competitors, and what do you think they do different that the banks are so much afraid of them, and who will win the game at the end?
Yeah, I think it follows also a bit your presentation. I think first of all, the market space itself became bigger just by reducing cash, and there's basically more space for innovation. I also believe that competition supports innovation, and I think that's what you see at the moment. There's a lot of innovation, a lot of great ideas, but I think what you also mentioned, it at one point in time it will go back towards consolidation. I think that's probably in the next, let's say, 5 to 10 years, it will be more consolidation, and then it will turn out that there might be different types of players. Probably the rather traditional ones based on the schemes, Visa, MasterCard, but then also new buy now, pay later initiatives that emerge. I think there's space for different types of payment solutions. What is, I believe, certainly right, what you also mentioned in your speech, is that it needs to be seamless. If it's seamless, I think then there's a very great way that new innovations will be successful.
So banks still have a chance for you?
I think so, yeah.
Good to hear. Okay. Another initiative I was already mentioning before is the new European Payment Initiative, so EPI, which is actually currently discussed between leading European banks, the central bank and also the European Commission. And the idea is actually to position the banks again in the payment game, yeah, and to take a little bit away the market share and the power of the big American brands. Maybe for you, Carlos, how do you see the chances of success? without telling too much secrets here. And what is actually needed to be successful also? Because I mean, you can launch a brand, but at the end it needs to be successful in the market as well.
Yeah, yeah. No, absolutely. So I think, first of all, we as Cooperative Banking Group are fully committed to the European Payment Initiative. That's the reason why our mother company, DZ Bank, is one of the founding shareholders of the interims company of EPI. So the main idea of a pan-European payment scheme, I think there is no doubt, no question that it makes sense. However, in the past, we have already seen different initiatives like, let's call it Monet, for example, or also EAPS, the European Payment Alliance, which haven't been successful. Mm-hmm. So the question, as you already raised, is what is the way to a successful path? And from my point of view, I think the only successful solution can be delivered if a real pan-European decision is made, in the sense of all European countries are contributing part of their payment infrastructure into the target picture of a European payment scheme. If you look from a bird's point of view, in the sense of payments in Europe, we started with the main idea of a single euro payment area. And before that, we started with the idea of euro and all the other points. And the question is, why to stop a single euro payment area in the point of sale or in the e-commerce area? It makes no sense. And I'm not talking about the European independence from China or the United States. That's not my point. But again, if we are from a consumer and also from the merchant point of view, talking about a single euro payment area to enable the consumer to travel and buy everything in a pan-European area, why should they stop with the point of sale? Make no sense. However, again, we will only be successful if we have a joint effort and a 100% commitment of all European countries to move forward.
Mm-hmm. Many say actually there is no need on the consumer side for that. So the consumer can pay, can do everything he wants. So why investing all this money? Why doing all this effort to push something on the consumer he doesn't really want?
We have seen, especially also on your slide, that we are currently talking about so many different alternative payment methodologies. Mm-hmm. And I fully agree on your slide that the target picture is the wallet. And the question is there still space in Europe for a pan-European wallet? And from this perspective, I'm pretty convinced that there is space and that the consumer wish, or I hope that they wish, to link their current account with a kind of wallet which is able to handle the different money as they use it. And we need to take into consideration that if we are talking about a digital euro, the base of a digital euro is a wallet. So we will need, from the European Central Bank point of view, a kind of wallet, at least to store the digital euro. So therefore, I'm again convinced that there's space.
Okay. Another argument which is always raised against EPI is the topic of the financial return on investment. So huge amounts are there in the press, but needs to be invested. And most of the shareholders of the banks expect actually a short to midterm return on the investments, right? So, and on the other hand, when we look at the big tech companies, being it's the American based or also others, they don't think like this, right? They think more long term, and they think more about the access, the client access. They think more about the data. Matthias, you were like also presenting your case, and in particular the capital market performance of your bank. So what's your view on those arguments? Yeah, can a bank really invest this money without a clear payback in 3, 4, 5 years, which is still within the contract of the CEO? And yeah, how does it work?
We have to remember that this is a very special time we live in. Weighted average cost of capital is almost 0, so you can take a very long-term view. That might change. It will not be lower anyhow. So I guess that long-term view, and inflated or whatever, inflated high, at least equity prices might actually go away, and it will be more sort of cash flow oriented. But let's take EPI. There is a Nordic EPI going on. So let's. I think we need legislation. Even in Nordics, we had a breakdown of that cooperation almost immediately when the Norwegian bank said, no, we don't want to participate. So I think legislation is the only way forward to get it done.
Fully agree.
There will be no European payment infrastructure without legislation.
But how do you force a bank and the shareholder, which is on the capital market, to invest hundreds of millions?
You have to force them
without a clear.
You have to force them. It's the only way. Otherwise it's not going to happen, because it works today. It can be better, and let's say tilting it towards the consumer, which is PSD2. It's nothing that the banks want. Doesn't help the banks anyway in no respect. So without legislation, there will be no infrastructure like that.
Okay. Good. Then maybe another hot topic of the industry at the moment. Yeah, even you said it's already around for 50 years, which is true. But still, one of the hot topics is buy now, pay later at the moment, right? I mean, Klarna's valuation, we know Afterpay, who got like bought for a lot of money, and a lot of fintechs which start into this business. So it's a connection of payments and financing, as I was saying before, addressing also the needs of the consumer. So maybe at you, Roland, what's your view on this hype? Is it like justified? Is it like just another round of investors who are driving something through the market? How do you see it?
If you look back, and I think that's what you also mentioned a bit, a credit card is basically maybe the most, let's say, base product of buy now, pay later, which existed already since many, many years. And I think what I also mentioned before is now this competition, this innovation actually drives additional solutions. I think to have only a credit card as a, let's say, buy now, pay later is maybe not what should be in Europe today. And I think this hype actually helps really to innovate, to bring in new ideas into the market. And then at the end, the customer will decide what is really relevant for them. But I certainly see that there will be different solutions for different use cases going forward that will also continue to be established.
Will you invest in the IPO of Klarna?
Not yet foreseen.
Good. Then maybe let's change a little bit to the other side of the two-sided market. Yeah, let's look a little bit at the merchants, because I mean, all this topic of variety of payment methods, of converging of payments and financing, of more digital wallets, etc., is obviously also impacting the merchants. So how is actually the merchant landscape, or the merchant acquiring landscape, changing, Carlos? And what has the strongest impact on this landscape in the short to midterm?
I think there are two different perspectives. On the one hand side, we need to see that the merchant itself has the challenge to integrate all the different payment methodologies. He has the pain that he wants to sell any good, and he don't want really to refuse any customer saying, I'm sorry, I'm not accepting this specific payment methodology. So the complexity currently at this point of time is increasing from the merchant point of view. So the acquirer need to make this kind of complexity in the payments scape easier. And of course, we see that there is a huge consolidation going on in the market. But from my perspective, especially as we are a German-based and primarily focusing on the German-speaking area with merchant acquiring solutions, we realize that especially if you have value-added services, if you have a one-stop shop solution, if you have the capacity to advise and create together with your merchant the specific solution for the merchant, there's still enough space for everybody.
Okay, meaning also, despite the consolidation, despite the big platforms which are existing, you think there is still space for local acquirers?
Absolutely.
Like
of course, there is a huge price pressure due to commodity solutions. I'm not talking about just, let's say, a sum up terminal which is addressing a very small merchant. If we are talking about merchants with a specific complexity, there's still the need for somebody who is sitting in front of the merchant, knowing the specific need of the market, knowing the consumer behavior in this market, and able to advise and support them in the specific needs. That's the reason why companies like we have, we are not supporting, let's say, Uber or Netflix or YouTube in their payment solutions, but we are supporting mid-sized merchants like Europa Park Rust, like Eintracht Frankfurt, like Karlsruher Fußballclub, you name it. So mid-sized merchants who have specific regional requirements.
Mm. And that the topic is very interesting. I mean, also Deutsche Bank we entered actually the acquiring business. So there is again some traction also in this. So they seem to have or see some potential.
Exactly. It seems to be an attractive market, and also Advanzia are working on both sides, issuing and acquiring. And the reason, I believe, but you may also want to answer it, the reason is there is still space for generating margins and developing new product solutions. And this, from my point of view, just underlines that payments is very attractive. And that's the reason why Deutsche Bank is jumping into, after selling all the assets in the last 10, 15 years in this space. So I believe makes sense, or?
Okay, while the European merchant acquiring segment, I would say, is still a little bit more traditional. Yeah? We see actually in other markets that they, in particular in the small merchant business, are much more like developing the business model also towards, right? So they're not just focusing on the transaction, they're also more and more going in other service areas. Yeah? I mean, if you look at Square, they obviously, Square Capital is one of the hugest merchant financiers in the market. They offer like a tech solution, software solution for the merchants to really become like kind of ERP system for them, you know, manage the whole business. So there are a lot of like examples from abroad. How do you see those offerings in the European market, Matthias? So do you think there is potential as well, or is this something which just works in the US and the Europeans should focus on the relationship and the putting the traditional terminal in the hands of the merchant?
I think there's been initiatives, but nothing that has taken off to that extent as we have seen in the US, because the European market is not, let's say, as dynamic as the US one. We saw iSettle out of Sweden doing merchant financing based on the terminal they're acquiring. They are now owned by PayPal. But that was a small scale business. It never took off. So it was really subscale. So I think what we do in our buy now, pay later, which is sort of acquiring, but not the full acquiring. Acquiring will sort of be massive companies handling that kind of risk, because it's risky. I think value-added services like information, how you can deal with that, how you can make the merchant actually function in a better way. I think there you would see some progress and some new players coming out. And and there is a battle going on with, for instance, the Klarna and the Afterpay will like to be a consumer company, but the merchants, they definitely don't want them to be consumer companies. They would like to be them as B2B companies supporting only merchants. So I think we'll see where this goes. You can't sort of compete with your customers. It's difficult. I think that's somewhere along those lines we will see some change.
And the attractive in such a business model here, when you go into the software part, is obviously also the access to data again. So on the merchant side now.
Yeah,
so if you know everything about the merchant, I mean, obviously it's very nice to offer him products even before he knows he needs those products.
Yeah,
right?
and you can offer him valuable insights, and you can aggregate the data in a good way, and sort of that. But we have regulations, so stands in a way more here than in the US. GDPR is not a simple thing to deal with, and it's also dangerous to go too far. It can become costly. So the US has an advantage in that area as well.
Okay, we already mentioned EPI and that the government and the politicians are getting more and more involved in payments. They are really excited about this topic. And I think this year, the European Commission, they also announced the European retail payment strategy. So with different cornerstones, promotion of cross-border payments, development of competitive and innovative payments markets, better infrastructure, instant payments, for example, more efficient international payments supporting also the international role of the euro. So for official cornerstones, At Roland, how do you see this strategy? Does it goes in the right direction, first of all? What are the key cornerstones you think make sense? And does it create any impact at the end? Or is it just like a nice paper and a nice view?
I think one of the big topics in Europe is indeed the cross-border harmonization. And I think that's one of the big topics also in that area, which we as Advanzia Bank, being present in different markets, it's a very key aspect to have harmonized regulation speed. For example, currently also being discussed the EID, that it's harmonized throughout Europe, AML, KYC, the Consumer Credit Directive is coming up, so that these topics are harmonized in the same way as it's currently discussed. I think this is the key also to have a strength or powerful EU market space, and that's probably the basis for all the topics that come afterwards.
More standardization in Europe, more openness means also easier for others to come in with their product, right? I mean, if you talk about standardization of QR codes, I mean, I can imagine there are some digital wallets in Asia just sitting and waiting till this happens, to jump on this train. So
I don't think it will happen though, because it never happened. European Union it will not be quick. I will be retired. That's not a problem.
On the other side, also to mention, I mean, we are a Luxembourgish bank. We are active in Germany since many, many years, quite successfully. So it doesn't mean that today it's not possible, but maybe it's also a good way to bring German solutions toward Europe. So it's probably also with the give and take within the European area. So it's not necessarily only the downside.
Okay.
But harmonization takes time. We have seen that. It's really complicated.
And even when they have the aim of harmonization, it doesn't work out like in PSD2. We know, Before we open up for some questions also from the audience, if you have some questions towards the panelists here, maybe a last question to each of you. If you would like to say, how do you imagine actually the future of the payments industry in 5 to 10 years? In 1 minute, maybe a maximum 1 minute, maybe a short summary.
I can start. 5 to 10 years. 5 years, not much change. 10 years, there would be some European champion competing with the likes of PayPal. I think that's the winners. There will be a shakeout. We can't have that many players. There will be one big one, maybe, that will take a similar role as PayPal, because they have not been so good in and if it's Klarna or if it's someone else, let's see. It will still require massive amounts of capital. I was just looking the other day at Capital One. It's a credit card issuer from the US. Their balance sheet is 250 billion US, and Klarna's balance sheet is 43 times less than that. So this will require massive amounts of equity. And that amount of equity can only come if it's a proven business model, and it will take time. You know, they have raised like $1 billion. They need to raise $50 billion. So it's a game changer to take that kind of position, to take that kind of part, because European payments might be smaller than the US, but it's there will be maybe one winner, I think, going forward in driving the payment
at least
industry.
one of our hopes we have in Europe, right?
I maybe take it from a customer perspective. I cannot say which solution is going to be the most successful one, but I think from a customer perspective, it should be that you don't talk about payment. So it's as seamless as possible, that it's basically integrated in the checkout process, that you don't need to enter credit card numbers by tipping, or that you don't need to have cash in your wallet in different currencies, etc. So it should be fully integrated in the checkout process, enhanced with additional offers like buy now, pay later, etc. But today, I think we are still missing that smooth checkout process in the different types of payments that we have.
I think within 10 years, we will get a single wallet consolidating your ID, your driver license, and your payment methodology, vehicle, whatever it may be, will be in the future. We will get rid of cash. So every payment transaction will be electronically, and you will not pay anymore for transaction processing. You will pay with your data.
And we might have the German cent dollar or something, cent euro or something.
Exactly.
Perfect. So thanks a lot to the panelists. Are there any questions from the audience? Nothing.
Everybody
all have the same view. I mean, that digital wallets will win the market is probably something good for payback, right?
Can you elaborate a bit more? Decentralized finance. What? I'm not. I'm only a banker. You know, it's
blockchain-based finance at the end. Take the intermediary out.
Sure. My apologies. Decentralized finance has the basic idea of leveraging decentralized structures, especially the blockchain, for financial transactions, any kind of financial transaction, which effectively eliminates a bank, which in this case would be more like a middleman rather than a facilitator, and an unnecessary middleman at that. So the question is, what are your thoughts on decentralized finance and the role of banks, if any?
Short comment. I would say the regulator will decide if that's possible or not. So far, when I talk to the Swedish regulator, they don't like decentralized finance too much. They like the current model where you have a settlement, the bank in the middle. So
I think in addition to this, we as Advanzia Bank, we have a banking license because of the deposit product, not because of the credit card itself. I think where we rely a lot on is on the MasterCard rules, on the Visa rules, where you also have, for example, chargeback rules, fraud management, etc. So to, let's say, bring something up that has that power, that effect, but also that trust from a scheme perspective. So also having a set of rules that work if things don't work as the customer wants to have it worked, I think that is probably the basis to give also this trust. And that's, you know, in reality, probably not that easy to really develop. What do you do if you have a flight cancellation, want to have your money back, especially now during COVID times? You need to have all these sets of rules in place. It's not only the payment, but maybe also the reversal then. And that's, I think, the big challenge at the end of the day.
I fully agree what my previous colleagues already said. The question is who is taking and managing the risk? How is the decision made? Where is the, let's say, decision engine is allocated, and who is driving this? So there are, from my point of view, currently huge challenges for this.
Okay, I would also say, I mean, it's a very attractive and theoretically nice concept. And I think there is some power, and in some business cases, you will really eliminate some intermediaries. However, as the colleagues were saying already, I mean, the factor of risk, the factor of, if we talk about like payments and, for example, the Bitcoin hype, yeah, we can all pay with Bitcoin. At the end, it didn't work out, right? So there's too much volatility in, and but the technology itself, and also in some use cases, it will be applied. But I don't think it will replace banks, to be honest. Also, that's a fantasy of some people out there, I know. Any further questions? Everyone wants to go for a drink.
Dann besten Dank. Merci. Thank you very much.
Thank you.